My name is Frank Pack, and I'm going to be doing a recreation site assessment. This is on the Cottage Grove Ranger District in the Umpqua National Forest, Cottage Grove, Oregon, here in the United States. The Cottage Grove Ranger District is located in the northernmost portion of the Umpqua National Forest. These lands are located in southwest Oregon. The Rujeta Campground has roots in the Rujeta Forest Camp, which was set up by the Civilian Conservation Corps during the Great Depression. And this program was a national program set up to bring young men that had unfortunately lost jobs and were being affected by the economy at that time to work in conservation. At this site, there were 52 man camps, and these were essentially an area for men to be able to be housed and for them to work and contribute to this particular mission. So these enrollees were doing everything from planting trees and maintaining roads, and they built trails. And there's also infrastructure like telephone lines and other structures. They were able to build the Fairview Lookout, which is a site still being used today. And they were fighting fires, and there was also an administration building that we'll visit and talk more about called the Music Guard Station. And essentially, it has evolved. Following the history, today the new Ranger District is in a new structure today, and basically the area is covered in conifers. There's mountain creeks and waterfalls, and you can do all different types of recreational activities here. You can go camping, you can ride your mountain bike around, you can fish, and there's even a guard station that you can rent, which I mentioned is the Music Guard Station as a cabin rental. My objective is to go over the recreation areas within this district and to survey them. I'll basically give an observation of the conditions that they're in now, also go into causes and concerns for those conditions, and also talk about recommendations and rehabilitative efforts that I was involved in, and also talking about planning in the future. So regarding methods, I took on-site photographs and made observations. I took measurements and also did surveying. I was also involved as a roving host, and so I did a lot of face-to-face visit interactions, which we'll go over those really soon. I also met with the forestry staff and managers regularly, and there was also a recreation.gov, which is an approved website for visitor reviews. We'll talk about that. Regarding findings, so we'll talk about the present environmental, social, and managerial state of the campgrounds and the rec areas, and we'll talk about the conditions and concerns and regulations that apply there. And then also I'll reference the course material and resources that come from Oregon State Rec Resource Management Trail 251. We'll go over recommendations in all consideration of the current conditions and then future strategies. Also apply concepts and approaches from the course from Oregon State Rec Resource Management Trail 251, summer 2020. Also realistic means to ends considering the resource and regulation constraints currently with the U.S. Forest Service. And then going over existing management, staff ideas, as well as my own under COVID-19. Now to begin, we have a risk assessment that deals directly with COVID-19, and so I want to highlight a couple of things. First off, the risk assessment, I did go ahead and sign that along with my 3 children that were helping me out there this summer. So essentially, the 3 items I want to highlight, working in the field and office, extremely high probability of contracting COVID-19, performing general maintenance in the public interactions, high, and then also working with others in the field, vehicle use is extremely high. So every ounce of mitigation was utilized during this period of time. Definitely didn't send me out empty-handed. I was issued a volunteer service vest as well as a number of tools and equipment and other types of resources, namely a pair of pruning shears for trail maintenance. I was issued a Pulaski, which is a modified axe for fire, wildland fire. It was created by a gentleman named Ed Pulaski after the 1910 Great Fires. And also a McLeod, which is a modified hoe/rake and used to build fire breaks and put fires out on the ground. So lots of heritage and history with these tools. And it's given maps, a Bendix radio, and given a key and combinations to be able to access the areas that I needed to be able to get into to do the work I did this summer. So finally, we arrive at Regeda Campground, which you have to cross Lane Creek and a bridge that has history going back to the Civilian Conservation Corps. It's a beautiful creek, and the host site's just off to the right-hand side. It's very open and welcome. It's right there with the view of the creek, and you constantly hear that creek through the day. It's very nice. So upon arrival at the site, I was able to set up camp and was able to kind of take everything in. My host site had plenty of space for me, essentially. I think it's probably more than adequate for even an RV. So I was able to notice I had a landline phone for emergency calls. I was able to utilize a fire pit and had a grill, and also had a nice sized picnic table, and I had a water spigot in case I wanted to tie in, which would have been appropriate for an RV or just for washing hands or washing things. Also had access to the creek. I was able to get an idea of how the campground was set up in a nice big loop. I was able to take a look at the restrooms and the other sites, and to get a good feel for where things were and the condition that they're in. COVID-19 kind of presented some challenges for anyone that wanted to use the little playground, so that was all taped off, and you weren't allowed to use any of that stuff. So we were able to mitigate concerns that folks had when they showed up. Um, Everybody's used to, I should say not everybody, but most people are used to being able to just use the fee envelopes and drop them in the box, but that was all covered up. And the notice was put on there for folks to go to recreation.gov, which is a third-party site online. Now, the recreational tech that was there, she had something called a DAR, and this was basically like an iPad that was used to link up to the system to be able to see who had reserved sites already. But we were still able to work with folks if there was availability, if there was empty sites, people that did not have access to computers. And of course, in this particular area, you can't even use a cell phone. There's definitely no Wi-Fi, anything like that. So you really, so it was really an interesting situation being able to mitigate that and work with folks. And I think it was a good outcome. So took an opportunity to visit the creek after we get set up, and my son, who loves the outdoors, and I'm really, I can't uh, overstate that. He was all over the place, and he was able to examine the habitat, and he was able to find some crawfish. And I grew up in Louisiana, so crawfish are near and dear. Although I like to eat them more than play with them, my son was able to examine the creek and all the wildlife, and it was a lot of fun. And that's right next to our host site. Okay, so time for a hike. We hit the Sword Fern Trail. It is a year-round trail, and it gets moderate use. It's on the more difficult side, 2.1 miles, and its elevation is anywhere from 1,200 to 1,450 feet. Trail is located 19 miles southeast of Cottage Grove, and the trail begins and ends in the day-use picnic area. So starting at the historic CCC campground registered booth located in the Regeda picnic area, the trail parallels the south side of Lane Creek and through a beautiful stand of second-growth Doug fir and lush sword fern on the understory. So the trail leaves Lane Creek and climbs to an abandoned logging road where it eventually loops back to the Regeda picnic area, which is about 1.6 miles. And then you may continue on the logging road that loops back into the camping loop, which is a total of about 2 miles. So points of interest include evidence of the early 1900 logging techniques, such as springboard cuts in 10 to 12 foot high stumps and small gullies deepened by log skidding. So you return in the fall and you get to see all the magical colors along the stream. The trip duration for the loop is about 1 to 1.5 hours, and the trail grades average about 10% with a few short, steep sections where it climbs to connect with an abandoned logging road. So there's picnic tables at the trailhead available for picnicking, but there's no required use fee. Well, it didn't take long to run into the winter storm damage. Probably maybe, I don't know, less than 10 minutes into the trail from the host site, we run into everything from soil erosion to bridge washout to fallen trees from the wind. And very significant damage. I was able to see the work that the Forest Service did. The forestry technician, which I met, he was out there earlier and had made those cuts in the trail just to be able to allow access, and pretty significant damage. Yeah, I hear my son couldn't help himself standing next to the roots of one of these fallen trees and being able to look and observe all of the different types of environmental damage from the storm was interesting. And so I was able to document quite a bit of that and also enjoy the trail. So we'll take a look at this site. We'll go ahead and go over some of the things that we observed, and we'll also talk about the rehabilitative effort that we participated in over the summer and talk about the future. Okay, so we arrived at the Music Heritage Site. So objective here was to be able to assess the conditions. Now currently due to COVID-19, the actual rental is not open right now, but folks are allowed to go to the site and allowed to view the different structures and things around there. So I was able to gain access due to my volunteer status, but was able to see a very different picture than you would have prior to COVID-19. Now it's about an hour drive from Rajada, so once you get up to the top and you've made it, so you probably need an all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, because it's an old road and it's a beautiful, beautiful site. It's breathtaking, the mountain view, the vistas on a beautiful day. Um, you've got a restroom that's just outside on the property, and there is a gated entry. The cabin or the guard station itself, $50 a night. Um, there's no electricity, no running water, so you've got to bring your own lighting and you bring your own water as well. And there's places to sleep on both stories, both first and second floor. And there's a kitchen, living area, living dining room area in there, wood burning stove. Really, really nice and cozy place. Well, the route to the cabin provided a lot of great benefits in and of itself. So beautiful views. There was a beautiful waterfall, which my son just couldn't help himself. He took advantage of that. And then we were able to stop and talk to folks that are coming up and down that road as well. It's not a very wide track, so you sometimes have to pull to the side to let folks by, but definitely beautiful, beautiful environment. So Champion Creek runs parallel to the majority of that saddle that you use to get up to Music. The Champion Creek is a beautiful habitat. The wildlife in the area, we were notified of a black bear that had been in the area, and there were deer, which I was able to capture a photograph of one. So just a very serene environment. You can definitely tell you're away from civilization. En route to Music, we were able to observe the mining pass of the district. As you might be aware, the United States Forest Service does permit mining in their forests, and so there's evidence of gold that has been extracted from the area. So active mining claims and mining caves as well as reservoirs, evidence of this activity in the past and currently. En route to Music, we were able to observe the winter storm damage, pretty significant, although the forestry technician was able to clear out the debris so that you can still make your way up the mountain. So very definitely appreciative of that. So the site of Music Guard Station experienced its share of winter storm damage. Now being up at the higher elevation, it was prone to that, but these older structures that have survived many, many years definitely were damaged in some way, along with a large tree that just kind of parked itself right across the drive to the cabin is all evidenced. Now there's clear evidence of vandalism and theft and visitor neglect once you get to the guard station. Broken windows, busted in doors, broken cabinetry, and just property just kind of thrown around and things like that. Upon further observation in the outbuildings, I was able to see the same sort of conditions as the other parts of the site. There was definite vandalism and theft, and it was quite a sight to behold. Also, upon observation, just noticing the general wear and tear on the structure, um, drop bars that didn't fit the slots, and a sinking second floor ceiling, and some missing hardware and missing furniture as well. Also, evidence on the exterior of the cabin. There was definitely some issue with siding, rot, and exposure, and took assessment of that as well. So what I did is I went through an approval process through the staff at the Cottage Grove Ranger District and U.S. Forest Service to be able to access the cabin and be able to do rehabilitative work. So I had to go through that approval process and was cleared to be able to do certain types of work on the structure. And so I was excited about that, and my son and daughter and I got right to work, and we began doing rehabilitation on the cabin. Right away noticed some areas that I thought were on the priority list, not only security for the back door, but also the ceiling on the second floor. And I realized on the second floor that the windows didn't have a way of being able to keep them from flying open. So I was able to do a little bit of homework and found some period correct receivers for the latches. So I was excited to be able to find two, which is exactly what I needed. So I noticed on the second floor that one of the bunk beds was missing a top bunk. Now, yeah, I don't know why that's missing, but anyway, I noticed the one on the bottom was okay. So I took some measurements and went to the hardware store and bought some furniture grade plywood, 3-ply, and maple. And I went ahead and matched the stain to a chip I took off of one of the existing boards, and got that all set up. Observed the sliding windows in the main room was missing an entire panel. So I ended up contacting locally a restoration expert, and he was able to reconstruct based on an existing window to the exact dimensions of reproduction. So I was able to obtain that and get that primed and painted, and had some glass cut to dimensions that would match as well, and I was able to get that ready to go as well. Now, I appreciated all the help from my two kids. There was some time-consuming stages to some of the demo. The old panes of glass that were duct tape on there, and the old siding that was rotten. We were able to put primer on the new siding shiplap, and we were able to get new panes of glass installed as well. Well, it goes to show when you're dealing with history, be prepared for surprises. So I was able to unearth a little archaeological find when I pulled away one of the shiplap panels to replace it. There was an old work boot, I believe, from the Civil Conservation Corps era, and I ended up giving that over to a staff, and that went to an archaeologist. So we'll be interested to see where that's displayed next. I was able to discover observable evidence of visitors in various sites, everything from Rujeta, Sword Fern Trail, all the way up along the route to Music and back. Noticed debris and trash and other types of activity from folks that have used those sites previous. Also observable are message boards, and this particular one, this gentleman named Michael Bryson went missing from the Hobo Campground, which is en route to Music Guard Station from Ujeda, and he is still missing to this day, and so there's been a significant and increasing effort to try to track him down and try to find out where he is.